Welcome back to True Crime and Nails, fellow Stardust. If this is your first time joining me, welcome. Today we'll be talking about some developments in the Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell cases. I'll start with a little bit of a background, but for a more in-depth look into the years leading up to the murders of JJ and Ty Lee, you can check out my previous video. I'll leave the link in the top right-hand corner of the screen here. Some people like to believe, including her son Colby, that Lori was different before she met Chad Daybell. However, I don't see that. Before she met her fifth husband, Chad Daybell, her third husband, Joseph Ryan, Ty Lee's biological father, died April 3, 2018. Lori met Chad months later in the fall of that year. Joseph Ryan's death was attributed to a heart attack, quote-unquote natural causes, and he was cremated. Before his death, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, attacked him with a taser in 2007 and threatened his life. Alex was sentenced to 90 days in jail and 5 years probation. Alex claimed that Joseph was abusive toward Lori and the kids and that he was sexually abusing Colby, Lori's first son from her second marriage. Family members say they don't believe these allegations, and I have not heard Colby talk about them. Joseph and Lori's divorce was finalized in 2005, but the custody battle dragged on for years. Joseph requested a psychological evaluation of Lori because she stated that she would rather die than let Joseph see Ty Lee. At one point, she even hid Ty Lee from him for a month. So when she met and married her fourth husband, Charles Vallow, in 2006 and tried to start a new life with him, she had her brother threaten Joseph in 2007. This didn't stop Joseph from continuing to be involved in Ty Lee's life. Tired of dealing with Joseph, I believe Lori drugged him, causing his heart to fail. After Joseph's death, there are 5 more deaths that occur in less than 2 years that revolve around Lori. Obviously, this is no coincidence. There is even a recording of her talking about how the scripture says it's okay to kill someone if they've gone after you 3 times in regards to Joseph.
I was going to murder him. I was going to kill him, like the scriptures say.
New audio allegedly coming from Lori Vallow Daybell reveals she wanted to murder her third husband and Ty Lee's father, Joseph Ryan.
He was constantly trying to get custody of my 3-year-old daughter, and
Annie Cushing, Ryan's sister, claims the recording was from an apparent religious group gathering.
if he comes against you once, if he comes against you twice, if he comes against you 3 times, then you can kill him. It says it in the scriptures in the Book of Mormon. I was like,
Where Vallow spoke about Joseph Ryan and their custody battle over Ty Lee.
after we were divorced, told everybody that I was this lying, crazy Mormon.
It's like a peek behind the curtain that shows you, what this looked like, how she processed this, how she justified even wanting to murder Joe.
At the time of the recording, Lori was married to fourth husband Charles Vallow. Annie says she shared the recording with both media and law enforcement to urge Phoenix police to reopen Ryan's case and investigate his death.
Because I already had suspicions that she may have had a hand in Joe's death. Hearing her talk so openly about it was alarming, it was sad. There was also an element of, I gotcha.
KTVB reached out to Phoenix police about the recording and Ryan's case. In a statement, they said the Phoenix Police Department has been made aware of the information and is reviewing the 2018 death investigation of Joseph Ryan.
She never circles back and even tells the group that Joe was dead. She never says, oh yeah, so I wanted to murder him, but then he died of a heart attack, just 6 months ago.
This all comes after the death of Rexburg kids JJ and Ty Lee, who disappeared in September of 2019.
She still has not been charged for the murder of Joseph Ryan. 3 years before Joseph's death in 2015, Lori began reading Chad Daybell's Doomsday books. And while I do think that the books may have had an influence on her, I still believe she was always on a path of becoming more and more evil and delusional. At this time, she is still married to Charles Vallow, who her family believed to be the best husband she had ever had. And he had converted to Mormonism from Catholicism when they got married in 2006. In 2018, Lori met Chad Daybell at an event called Preparing the People. Chad told her that she lived many lives in the past and that they had been married 7 times before. They believed they were a part of the Church of the Firstborn and that they were spiritual leaders whose mission was to lead the 144,000 from the Book of Revelation and to rid the world of zombies. Zombies were people whose mortal spirit has left their body, in turn leaving their body to be the host of a dark spirit. On September 22nd, Lori tells then-friend Melanie Gibb that she believes that Tylee and JJ had become zombies. She said that Lori had said this once before when Tylee didn't want to babysit JJ. It's clear that this woman isn't in her right mind. After the kids went missing, 2 more people died. Charles Vallow is killed by Alex Cox, who said it was in self-defense, a story that sounded too much like the situation with Joseph Ryan. Tammy Daybell, Chad Daybell's late wife, was killed 2 weeks after Lori and Chad's wedding rings were purchased on Amazon. Chad turned down an autopsy and her death was attributed to natural causes, despite the fact that she was healthy and at the time training for a marathon. After Lori and Chad's wedding in Hawaii, a month after Tammy's death, investigators become suspicious and exhume Tammy's body in order to conduct an autopsy. Too bad Chad didn't ask for her body to be cremated. The very next day, after Tammy's body was exhumed and after being questioned by authorities, Alex Cox ends up dead. Another death attributed to natural causes. That is 6 deaths that happened between April 2018 to December 2019. It baffles me that this woman thought she could get away with all of these murders. Clearly, she's out of her mind, but she is sane enough to know right from wrong. She fully understands that what she did is not okay. It's taken a long time, but Chad and Lori have finally been charged with murder. In my last video, the charges I mentioned were desertion and non-support of children, resisting or obstructing officers, criminal solicitation to commit a crime, contempt of court, and alteration or concealment of evidence. It was frustrating to see that they still had not been charged with murder. Because of restrictions that the entire world has had to deal with this past year, it has taken investigators longer than normal to move the case forward. But we are finally one step closer to justice for Tylee and JJ. On May 25th, Lori was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, grand theft by deception, and first-degree murder of Tylee and JJ, punishable by life in prison or death. Chad is given the same charges, along with conspiracy of first-degree murder of his late wife, Tammy Daybell, and insurance fraud since he received almost $500,000 from his insurance for her death. This is a small victory for everyone following this story, and for the family of the kids. So while we can celebrate this victory, we've come across another roadblock. A court-approved psychologist has deemed Lori Vallow incompetent to stand trial. She has been transferred to a mental health facility where she'll undergo treatment to restore her competency. The claim is that as of right now, she is unfit for trial and incapable of assisting her attorney with her defense. The state prosecuting attorney, Rob Wood, contested the evaluation, but days later took back his objection. However, I still don't believe that she doesn't understand the charges against her, and I don't believe the court proceedings are so confusing that she isn't able to follow what's going on. She is just using every tactic she can to delay the trial. Luckily, the state of Idaho is one of the few states that has no insanity plea. Lori's hearings have been put on hold for 90 days, and if she still is deemed incompetent after that time period, her restorative treatment will be extended for another 180 days. And I have a feeling it's definitely going to be extended for another 180 days. However, Chad's court proceedings are moving forward. He pled not guilty to all 9 of his charges. Go freaking figure. But you know, that's all right. They tend to go harder on them at the sentencing hearing if they're found guilty after pleading not guilty. So go ahead, Chad. Plead not guilty all you want. The evidence is there, and you'll get what's coming to you.
Is the defendant's name, Mr. Daybell, spelled and listed correctly on that indictment on the caption? Yes, Your Honor, it is.
All right, thank you. At this time then, I will go through the charges that are listed in the indictment and the penalties for each charge. After doing that, then, Mr. Pryor, I'll ask your client how he pleads. So I'll read through the list of charges first, and then I'll ask for the plea after that. Then the indictment that was filed on May 25th, in count 1, charges Mr. Daybell the offenses of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception, both felony counts under Idaho Code 18-1701, 18-4003A, 18-24031, 18-24034A, 18-24071B3. The count in count 1 names Tylee Ryan as the victim on the murder charge, and that count carries a penalty on the murder charge of it is punishable by death or imprisonment for life, and it provides that if the death penalty is not pursued by the state, then the court shall impose a life sentence with a minimum period of incarceration of 10 years. The grand theft portion of that charge has a penalty of up to 14 years of prison and a fine of up to $5,000 and possible restitution. That's a summary of those charges, and you've waived the reading of the charges. So let me ask you on that count 1, Mr. Daybell, do you understand the charge and those possible penalties?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Okay. The next count in the indictment is count 2. That is a count of first-degree murder under Idaho Code 18-4001, 18-4002, 18-4003, subsection A, and 18-4004. And that count names Tylee Ryan as the victim. The possible penalty or punishment for that count is by death or imprisonment for life, and if the death penalty is not pursued, then the court shall impose a life sentence with a minimum period of incarceration of 10 years. Do you understand that charge and the possible penalties?
Yes, Your Honor.
Count 3 of the indictment charges conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception. Those are felonies under the same code sites that were previously listed under count 1. That count names Joshua Jackson Vallow, also known as J.J. Vallow, as the named victim in that count. And the penalty for those charges on the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder is punishable by death or imprisonment for life. And if the death penalty is not pursued, then the court shall impose a life sentence with a minimum period of incarceration of 10 years. On the charge of grand theft by deception, that would have a penalty of up to 14 years in prison and a fine of up to $5,000. Do you understand the charge in count 3 and those possible penalties, Mr. Daybell?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. Count 4 of the indictment charges you with first-degree murder, a felony under the statute previously cited in the other counts also. That count names J.J. Vallow as the victim, and again is punishable by death or imprisonment for life. If the death penalty is not pursued, then the court shall impose a life sentence with a minimum period of incarceration of up to 10 years. Do you understand count 4 and the possible penalties, Mr. Daybell?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the next count listed in the indictment is count 5, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. That count names Tammy Daybell as the named victim. It's charged again under Idaho Code 18-4001, 18-4003, subsection A, and 18-1701. And that count is also punishable by death or imprisonment for life. And if the death penalty is not pursued, then the court shall impose a life sentence with a minimum period of incarceration of 10 years. Do you understand the charge in count 5 and the possible penalties?
Yes, Your Honor.
Count 6 of the indictment is a charge of first-degree murder. That names Tamara Tammy Daybell as the victim. It's charged under Idaho Code 18-4001, 18-204, and 18-4003 subsection A. That count also is punishable by death or imprisonment for life, provided that if the death penalty is not pursued, then the court shall impose a life sentence with a minimum period of incarceration of 10 years. Do you understand count 6 and those possible penalties, Mr. Daybell?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, count 7 of the indictment is not a charge against you, it's a charge against a co-conspirator. Count 8 of the indictment charges you, Mr. Daybell, with the crime of insurance fraud, which is a felony under Idaho Code Section 41-293. That is a felony that carries up to 15 years in prison and a fine of up to $15,000 plus restitution. Do you understand that charge and those possible penalties?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, count 9 is also a charge of insurance fraud under that same statute. It carries the same penalty I just mentioned in count 8, which again is 15 years of prison and a $15,000 fine plus restitution. Do you understand that charge and those possible penalties?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, that is a summary then of the charges that have been filed against you and the penalties. I would also note those penalties in each of the counts could be ordered to be served either concurrently, meaning running together, or consecutively. And so do you understand those charges could also run consecutively in those different counts, Mr. Daybell?
Yes, I do.
All right, at this time then, having gone through the counts and the possible penalties, at this point I would ask your client how he intends to plea. Before I do that, Mr. Pryor, do you have any questions for the court or anything you need to discuss with your client before I ask for the plea?
No, Judge, and I anticipate that my client will be entering a plea of not guilty to all of the charges.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pryor. I will go through them then individually again. On count 1 of the indictment, Mr. Daybell, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
We'll enter the not guilty plea on count 1. On count 2, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
On count 3, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
On count 4, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
On count 5, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
On count 6, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
On count 8, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
And on count 9, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
Very well. Not guilty pleas are entered as to all the counts in the indictment. At this time, normally we would discuss a trial setting. I talked to counsel in chambers before we started, and given the nature of the case, we've determined that we'll set a scheduling conference 2 weeks from today to get a trial set. Does your client agree to a scheduling conference in 2 weeks in lieu of a trial setting right now, Mr. Pryor?
Yes, I've discussed that with him, and at this point, Judge, if you need that representation, he will represent that he's agreeable to setting this out for a status conference for the purposes of scheduling this case for further proceedings.
All right, very well. Do you understand then we'll set your trial in 2 weeks in lieu of doing that today, Mr. Daybell?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So we'll hold that hearing on June 23rd. Counsel, any suggestions on time? I'm thinking probably just in the morning at 9:30.
That's acceptable to the defense, Your Honor.
And that works for the state as well, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, I'll set the scheduling conference for June 23rd at 9:30 a.m. We will conduct that hearing by Zoom. That will not be a live in-person proceeding. And at that time, we will get the matter set for a trial on these counts.
And here is a snippet of a report talking about Lori's demeanor while in jail a few months ago.
A woman who spent time with Lori Vallow Daybell in the Madison County Jail is speaking out about how the mother was acting days after she was taken into custody here in eastern Idaho. Welcome back, Lori. Where are your kids? Daybell arrived in Rexburg on March 5th from Hawaii. She didn't have much to say to me then, but when she was booked into the Madison County Jail, she opened up to a woman who was in the same jail pod. Now, this woman has asked EastIdahoNews.com not to use her name for safety reasons, so we are calling her Melissa Cook. Jail officials confirm that the two were in a segregated pod from March 5th through the 8th, and they were the only two women in there. Cook says she made it a point not to ask Daybell about Joshua J.J. Vallow or Tylee Ryan, her children who had been missing since September. Nobody knew where they were at the time, but Cook did not want to bring them up because she wanted to build a relationship of trust with Daybell. Cook says Daybell was always upbeat and friendly. She never showed any sign of heartbreak, never cried, did not appear to be disappointed, and was glad that she was no longer incarcerated in Hawaii because she said that there were roaches in the facility in Hawaii and that the conditions were, quote, awful. Now, the day after Daybell was booked in Rexburg, she was scheduled for her initial court appearance in Madison County. You might remember media outlets from across the country were huddled outside and hundreds of people showed up. Daybell complained to Cook about her dry skin. She was worried about how she would look during the court proceedings, so Cook gave her some lotion, deodorant, and makeup she had purchased from the commissary. Now, many inmates also use Jolly Rancher candies and colored pencils for lipstick or eyeshadow. Cook says Daybell knew that this was a big deal and she was actually looking forward to it. When she returned to her jail cell hours later, she wanted Cook to watch the news with her. Actually, when it came on, she said, "Here it comes. Here's my story. Turn it up. Let's see what they say about me now." Now, at that point, the big issue was whether Daybell was going to be able to post $1 million bail. Cook says she was coming and going from her jail cell to meet with her attorneys constantly. And one time, Cook said, "Are you going to be able to post it today?" And Daybell responded by taking her hand from her head, rubbing it down her body, and saying, "We'll see if all of this is worth $1 million." When Daybell was not with her attorneys, Cook says she was likely talking on the phone or having video chats with her son Colby or new husband Chad. Cook recalls her telling Colby to read the book of Job and saying that he would understand the challenges she was going through. Daybell said she was being tested like Job. At one point, she said, "Colby, just listen to me. Everyone wants to know what's going on, but it's none of their business. God doesn't judge me, and they shouldn't judge me. The prophet says to stay off social media, so don't go on there." Cook describes Daybell's calls with Chad, her husband, as, quote, nauseating. She said that Lori Daybell wanted attention and affection and reassurance from her husband that he loved her, and she always made sure that she looked good if they were communicating. Daybell never spoke to Cook about religion, but spent her free time reading scriptures and praying. And all along, Cook believed that her children really were alive. She said that she thought Chad and Lori had taken them to a polygamy compound while she and Chad decided to start a new life together in Hawaii.
Thankfully, she wasn't able to post her $1 million bond. I'm just not sure how she's even able to pay for her lawyer, though. He's definitely not court appointed. What do you think the outcome of this is going to be? Do you think Tylee and JJ will receive justice? It won't be enough that one of them is locked up. They both need to suffer the full consequences of their actions. It's frustrating that she pulled this incompetency BS, further delaying court proceedings. All we want is for this to come to an end so that everyone can be happy knowing justice was served. There is no doubt in my mind that she's crazy, but she still knows the difference between right and wrong, and that's a fact. Well, thank you for joining me today, fellow Stardust. I appreciate you being here with me, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. I hope you take some time out for you today. All right, y'all. Peace.